Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be kind of exploring something I think pretty fascinating, a link between physical education and spirituality.
Okay.
And we're really focusing on how this impacts children in particular.
Mhm.
We often think of these as separate things, like spirituality
Mhm.
is over here and physical education is way over there.
Yeah.
But the sources we're looking at today reveal how movement and play can actually be,
Yeah.
it could be a powerful pathway to spiritual development.
Yes. It is an intriguing connection, and I think it is often overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. To really dig into this, we're going to be focusing on research conducted in Australian Catholic primary schools.
Okay.
It's a study that dives right into the experiences of students and teachers,
Interesting.
looking at how health and physical education,
Okay.
or HPE, can create opportunities for kids to tap into something bigger than themselves.
And it's worth clarifying, I think, how we define spirituality in this research.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about religion here. They're looking at it more broadly as a sense of connection, meaning, and purpose,
Mhm.
that feeling of being part of something larger than oneself.
Okay, so I'm already hooked. What do they actually find in these schools?
Well, one of the most interesting findings is that younger children didn't always talk about having these spiritual experiences during HPE,
Interesting.
but they definitely expressed it through their actions.
Yeah.
The researchers observed just this incredible enthusiasm and complete absorption in the activities.
So it's like their bodies were doing the talking,
Precisely.
even if their words weren't quite there yet.
This is in line with a concept called the felt sense,
Okay.
where young children especially experience and understand things through their bodies and movements rather than always having the words to articulate it.
I could totally see that. I mean, think about those times when you're completely lost in an activity you love. Maybe it's playing a sport
Yeah.
or dancing
Mhm.
or even something like gardening.
Sure.
There's this feeling of being totally in the moment,
Yeah.
right? Like you forget everything else.
Yes, and for children, that kind of experience can be deeply spiritual. They're not overthinking it. They're just fully present and connected to what they're doing.
And the study found that well-structured HPE classes,
Right.
especially those led by a dedicated HPE teacher, actually created more of these opportunities for kids to have these experiences.
Absolutely. The quality of the HPE program and the teacher's understanding of how to create these opportunities made a significant difference.
They actually had a great example from a middle school boy in the study
Okay.
who talked about how preparing for a physical activity gave him this feeling of determination and confidence. He said it was like he knew he could do it and wouldn't get hurt.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a sense of trust and perhaps even a connection to something beyond just his own physical abilities.
Definitely. It seems like there's something deeper going on there.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the quality of HPE programs.
Yes.
Didn't you say the study looked at schools of different sizes?
That's right. They included a small school without a designated HPE teacher,
Okay.
a medium-sized school, and a large school,
Okay.
both of which had dedicated HPE teachers.
I'm curious, did that difference in resources and staffing impact the findings at all?
It did, actually.
Okay.
The students in the schools with dedicated HPE teachers seemed to be more engaged, and they were better able to put those spiritual connections into words.
Okay.
The activities were also more varied and developmentally appropriate.
So having a dedicated HPE teacher who really understands this connection
Yes.
between physical activity and spiritual development
Yes.
can make a big difference.
It seems that way their expertise in designing and delivering a well-rounded HPE curriculum
Right?
was clearly linked to these richer experiences for the students.
That makes a lot of sense. It's not just about throwing kids out on a field and letting them run around.
No.
There's an art to creating those spaces where they can really tap into something more meaningful.
Exactly. And what's particularly interesting is how this research sheds light on the different ways kids experience and express spirituality through HPE.
Okay.
And we talked about the felt sense.
Right.
But as children get older,
Yeah.
they start to be able to articulate those connections more verbally, linking their experiences back to values they're learning in other areas of their lives.
So it becomes more of a conscious understanding as they grow.
Precisely.
Yeah.
They begin to connect how they act on the field or in the gym to how they want to live their lives overall.
Okay, so we're starting to see how physical activity can be this training ground,
Yes.
not just for physical skills,
Right.
but also for character development and even spiritual growth. This is fascinating.
It is, and this study actually provides some really compelling examples of this in action.
Okay.
Let's delve into those in more detail.
So you mentioned compelling examples.
Yeah.
What specifically did the researchers observe with these older students?
Well, one of the things that stood out was how much the older kids valued team sports.
They talked about how it felt different
Mm.
from individual activities.
Right.
They really appreciated having that support system,
Okay.
knowing that their teammates had their back if they messed up.
That makes sense. It speaks to that feeling of belonging
Yeah,
and connection, which is often a part of what we think of as spirituality, right?
exactly. It highlights that interconnectedness and the sense of being part of something larger than themselves.
It reminds me of something you touched on earlier about how these older kids start to connect their experiences in HPE
Yeah.
with values they're learning in other parts of their lives.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
For instance, some students talked about how HPE helped them understand the importance of perseverance
Okay.
and determination,
Right.
not just in sports, but also in their schoolwork or personal challenges.
It's like those qualities they're developing on the field or in the gym start to spill over into other areas of their lives.
Exactly. And remember, this study was conducted in Catholic schools.
So for some kids, spirituality was directly linked to their faith
Okay.
and the values they were learning in religious education.
So they were drawing connections between what they were experiencing in HPE and their understanding of their faith.
Right. They might see the value of teamwork
Okay.
as reflecting Christian teachings about loving your neighbor,
Hmm.
or the importance of effort and resilience as connected to their understanding of overcoming challenges with God's help.
I see. So for them, it becomes a very holistic experience where these different aspects of their lives start to reinforce each other.
Precisely. And while this particular study focused on Catholic schools,
Okay.
I think the core principle has broader applications.
Right.
It's about cultivating those positive qualities that benefit everyone, regardless of their religious background.
Absolutely. Things like teamwork, compassion, and perseverance
Yeah.
are valuable, whether you're religious or not.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that the study found these qualities were being nurtured through physical activity.
Okay.
It wasn't just something they were being told about. Right.
In a classroom setting,
Right.
they were actually experiencing it
Yeah.
and putting it into practice in a very tangible way.
You know, that really resonates with me. I think back to my own experiences in sports as a kid.
Uh-huh.
While I might not have articulated it as spirituality back then,
Right.
I can definitely see how those experiences helped shape my values
Yeah.
and my sense of self.
It's amazing how powerful those early experiences can be, isn't it?
Right.
And it highlights the importance of providing children with opportunities
Right.
for quality physical education where they can explore these connections and develop these essential qualities.
Oh, you've mentioned the importance of dedicated HPE teachers.
Yes.
A couple times now.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah.
What is it about having a specialized teacher?
Well, the teachers in the study who had specific training in HPE
Okay.
and a deep understanding of the curriculum
Okay.
were much more likely to create those rich, engaging experiences for their students.
Yeah.
So it's not just about having someone who can supervise a game of basketball.
No.
It's about having an educator who truly understands the potential of HPE
Yes.
to go beyond just the physical.
They were intentional about creating an environment where students could explore not just their physical abilities,
Right.
but also their character values and even their sense of spirituality. They understood that movement and play could be a pathway to those deeper connections.
That makes a lot of sense, and it speaks to the need for continued investment
Yes.
in quality HPE programs and professional development for teachers in this area.
Absolutely. We need to be equipping teachers
Right.
with
Right.
the knowledge and resources
Mhm.
to create these transformative experiences for students.
It sounds like there's a real opportunity here to shift the way we think about physical education.
Yes.
It's not just about fitness or learning sports skills.
Right.
It's about fostering holistic development,
Yes.
including those aspects of character and spirituality that are so essential to a well-rounded life.
I completely agree. This research offers a compelling case for reimagining the role of HPE in our schools and communities.
I'm sure our listeners are finding this as thought-provoking as I am.
Oh, I hope so.
But before we wrap up, I'd love to bring this back to a more personal level.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about how this applies to kids, but I think there's something here for adults as well, right?
Sure.
What can we, as grown-ups, take away from this research?
That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and lose touch with that sense of playfulness and pure joy and movement that comes so naturally to children.
Right.
But I think there's a valuable lesson here for all of us.
What do you mean?
Well, as we get older,
Yeah.
We tend to overthink things.
Uh-huh.
We get self-conscious worry about how we look
Right.
or whether we're good at something.
Mm-hmm.
And that can really take the fun out of physical activity.
Oh, I totally relate to that.
But what if we tried to approach physical activity with that same sense of wonder and openness that kids have?
I love that, like rediscovering the simple joy of moving our bodies
Yeah.
without all the mental baggage.
Exactly. What if we allowed ourselves to just enjoy the experience, to connect with our bodies, and to be fully present in the moment?
I think you're onto something here. It's like we need to reclaim that sense of playfulness
Yes.
and rediscover the spiritual connection
Right.
that can be found in movement.
Because those moments, however fleeting, can remind us that spirituality isn't just something we talk about
Right.
or read about in a book.
Mm-hmm.
It's something we can experience through our bodies, through our actions,
Yeah,
and our interactions with the world around us.
that's beautiful.
Mm.
I think that's a perfect place to, that's beautiful. I think that's a perfect place to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've been talking about how kids experience spirituality through physical activity.
Right.
But what about us adults? What does that look like in our lives?
Well, it's easy to get caught up as we get older in the routine and busyness of life and lose touch with that sense of play and pure joy in movement that comes so naturally to children.
Yeah, we start overthinking things,
Right.
worrying about how we look or whether we're good at something.
Exactly, just like
Mhm.
you were saying. But what if we tried to approach physical activity with that same sense of wonder and openness that kids have?
Right.
What if we allowed ourselves to simply enjoy the experience,
Yeah.
to connect with our bodies, and to be fully present in the moment?
Yeah. It's almost like we need to give ourselves permission to play again.
Yes, to rediscover that joy and freedom in movement without all the self-judgment and pressure we often put on ourselves.
I'm thinking about those times when I feel most connected to something bigger than myself.
Yeah.
Often it's when I'm out in nature,
Uh.
hiking or kayaking or even just taking a walk in the park.
Sure.
There's something about being in those environments that just makes me feel more grounded and at peace.
That's a wonderful example, and it speaks to the idea that spirituality can be found in many different forms of movement and connection with the world around us. It doesn't have to be confined to a specific religious practice or setting.
So for our listeners out there who are intrigued by this connection
Yeah.
between physical activity and spirituality, what would you suggest?
Well,
Where should they start?
I think a great starting point is to simply pay attention to how you feel
Okay.
when you engage in different types of physical activity.
Right.
Notice what brings you joy, what makes you feel alive and connected.
So it's about tuning into that felt sense we were talking about earlier,
Exactly.
but this time as adults.
And it might be different for everyone.
Right.
For some people, it might be dancing. For others, it might be running, swimming, yoga,
Mm-hmm.
gardening, or even just taking a walk in nature.
Right.
The key is to find what resonates with you
Yeah.
and allows you to tap into that sense of flow and presence.
And maybe to let go of some of those expectations and self-judgments that often get in the way of us truly enjoying movement.
Absolutely. It's about approaching physical activity with a sense of curiosity and playfulness, rather than as a chore or a means to an end.
It sounds like this is really an invitation to reconnect with our bodies and with the world around us in a more mindful and meaningful way.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah?
And who knows, you might just discover that those moments of movement and play become some of the most spiritually enriching experiences in your life.
That's a wonderful thought to leave our listeners with. So as you go about your day, we encourage you to consider the activities you find most engaging and fulfilling.
Yeah.
What is it about those experiences that makes you feel connected to something bigger than yourself? Could those be moments of spirituality in your own life? And with that thought-provoking question, we'll wrap up this deep dive.
That's good.
We hope you've enjoyed exploring the surprising connection between physical education and spirituality.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us.